The art piece I'm analyzing is a photograph taken of Wendy Red Star titled The Last Thanks. I chose to analyze this photograph because Wendy has done a lot of amazing artwork, specifically photography, and she certainly knows how to tell a story through a picture. She's sitting in the center of a long dinner table with a cheap red plaid tablecloth covering it. On the table, there's money, American Spirit cigarettes, plastic fall leaves, and canned and prepackaged food. Wendy has a styrofoam plate full of canned fruit, meat, green beans, and a sandwich to mock a normal Thanksgiving meal. She is also dressed in traditional Apsaloka regalia and holds a prayer fan in her hand. Her gaze is cast somberly across the table, and her hands are waiting and rested to be joined for prayer. At the table, there is also a blown-up turkey wearing a pilgrim hat seated to her right. Additionally, there are also skeletons positioned next to her, all posed ironically meant to represent Jesus' disciples. The skeletons are also wearing headdresses made of felt to mock Native American culture, as you might see children doing in primary school. The background of this photo is red, with fake windows showing the surrounding environment. The entire photo is meant to be a satirical reference to the Christian painting of the Last Supper. The creator of the scene and woman in the photo is Wendy Red Star of the Apsaloka tribe. She's a millennial who officially started her art journey at age 18 in Billings, Montana, by attending Montana State University for her Bachelor's of Arts degree. After that, she attended the University of California, Los Angeles to get her master's degree. Although she grew up on the Crow Reservation, Wendy felt the otherness that was being biracial in primary school and later doing identity-based artwork. There's no feeling like being dismissed from your tribe because you aren't entirely Native, and Wendy felt that every day until she found the freeness in art. Wendy also has an adopted Korean sister who is fully immersed in the Crow lifestyle and even able to speak Crow while Wendy could only speak English. Their father was a pilot who also was in a well-known Indian rock band, and their mother was a Crow nurse who used cultural methods in her practice. When Wendy graduated from Montana with a degree in art and Native American studies, her specialization was in sculptures. After getting her master's from Los Angeles, her work broadened to include photography, fashion design, beadwork, fiber art, performance art, and painting. After college, she lectured at Yale, Dartmouth, California's Institution of Arts, and Brown University. She also was a manager at a state park on the Crow Reservation until moving to Oregon to work on a piece that would get her recognized as an artist, which was her analysis of the people who attended the 1880 Crow Peace delegation. And those are the 3 photos on the bottom. Finally, in 2016, Wendy became a full-time artist. She uses humor and romanticism in her work to reference stereotypical colonialist ideas held by white people. The piece I'm analyzing hits right on the head of the nail of stereotypical colonialist ideas and rebuting them. Thanksgiving was just, in fact, the British military's celebrations of slaughtering Pequot men, women, and children in what is now Connecticut. The history behind this piece is that it's a satirical jab at Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. However, Wendy's piece is titled The Last Thanks, and the inspiration for this photo is the lack of truth about Thanksgiving and how Indigenous people quite literally gave their last thanks before being colonized and almost culturally destroyed by the British. At first glance of this photo, I notice a lot of red in the background and on the tablecloth. The color red tends to represent aggression, another possible small jab at the colonists' actions on what was supposed to be Thanksgiving. The frame pieces on the wall of this photo are what I presume to be windows, showing the plains outside. The plaid tablecloth is also another jab at white Americans and their cheap and quick remedies to set up for what many Americans know as the Great Thanksgiving Feast. Moving on to the items on the table, there is a mixture of cheap American food and of other inanimate objects as well. Moving from left to right, the first thing you notice is American Spirit cigarettes, which were degrading to Indigenous Americans in 2 ways. First, the cigarette brand uses a stereotype of an Indian man smoking them to make the cigarettes appear purer and healthier for white people. Furthermore, they were thought to be cigarettes made with addiction-free, pure tobacco until information was released revealing that they are not in fact pure tobacco, and tobacco itself is an addictive drug, which led to the company's slow burn diminish. Then, directly next to it are dollar bills, which could be interpreted either as the most important thing a white man could bring to the table, despite money having essentially no use to Indigenous Americans during the 1600s, and also as a current reference to the reality of the gambling stereotype and the impact it has on Indigenous Americans. Then, there's an open can of green beans, oatmeal cream pies, and a Twinkie. All of the food on the table is meant to represent the food that Wendy had to eat when visiting her white grandparents on Thanksgiving. The same can be said about the other food as we move down the table: the American cheese, bologna, margarine, canned mixed fruit, corned beef hash, and sandwich bread. Now, moving on to the people sitting at the table, there's Wendy in the middle, as stated earlier, wearing traditional Crow tribe regalia and holding a prayer fan in her left hand. On either side of her, there are skeletons posed either in surprise or in a hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil purpose to show the habit of white Americans to turn a blind eye to Indigenous Americans and their problems. Additionally, the skeletons are wearing felt headdresses to show the mockery of Native Americans that was made in primary school by predominantly white children. There is also an inflated turkey along with plastic leaves on the table, which are intended to show the stereotype that white people believe, which is the oneness that Native Americans share with nature. The fact that these items are plastic further shows Wendy's irritability towards that specific stereotype. The function of this piece is to show how easily Native American kindness was mistaken for overgiving and weakness. This piece emphasizes the white man's ability to take from another culture to reinvent their own version of something with much less time and effort going into its preparation. The longing look on Wendy's face and the fact that she is the only actual person in the photo is to show the solidarity that is being a Native American amongst white people. All of Wendy Red Star's art, but specifically the last thanks, represents all of our course themes. It addresses cultural appropriation by the skeletons representing white men taking over and diminishing the cultural significance of the headdress. It addresses cultural appropriation and colonialism by the food placed on the table. The Thanksgiving meal has become something people look for quick and cheap options for, despite it previously having been such a large and important feast. The piece also addresses cultural identity with the traditional regalia that Wendy is dressed in, along with the prayer fan in her hand. It also represents Wendy's conflicting identities of being white and Native American. With her gaze cast upon the scene before her, it's visible that she is discontent with the clashing of her identities both in this photo and in real life. It also addresses a number of stereotypes. For example, with the leaves scattered on the table and the inflated turkey, the stereotype that Indigenous people are one with nature. There's also the money and cigarettes, bringing up the stereotype that all Native Americans use some sort of drug, and that money represents the gambling stereotype. This piece also addresses survivance and resistance because Wendy is so obviously aware of the misinterpretation that so many Americans have about Thanksgiving and its history, along with Native Americans in general, but as any Native would, she resists and retells the story with satirical humor.